Good afternoon, my beautiful babes and babettes. I can only snap with one hand. But I'm your resident active advocate, and I spent the entire morning writing, and I'm very proud of myself. And I have no clients today, or so it turns out, so I'm doing this now, and that's fine. Probably. Maybe. Sort of. Kind of. But I don't have any work to do, so Anyway. Today, I would like to talk to you about a wonderful little book called The Someday Birds by Sally J. Pla, I want to say P-L-A. And this book is about another boy with autism, but he also definitely has tendencies of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. There's a lot of comorbidity, or the stereotype, or one of the stereotypes, is that there is comorbidity between autism or neurodiversity and OCD. So I actually knew someone with very, quote, high functioning autism. I would call it Asperger's, which is on the autism spectrum, but it's a very, quote, again, high functioning form of it. He had social issues, like he wasn't the best at making friends. He could talk to you until the sun went down about certain things, but he was also a very picky eater. This is quite similar to our main character, Charlie, in this book, whose whole entire life is falling around him. And one of the main catalysts for this is the fact that his father is a war journalist who had been shipped out to Afghanistan. He's a non-combatant, but he had been in a vehicle with other soldiers that was supposed to be safe, but had been attacked by the other side. And his father comes home, like he's sent home and to the hospital, and there's a very long hospital stay he has to take, of course. He's very severely injured. He's got very severe brain injuries going on, and the family doesn't know whether he's even going to live or die. So one of the main aspects of this book is Charlie attempting, under his own power, to put his life back together. And one of the main ways in which he seeks to do this is by making a book full of what he calls the someday birds, which is where you get the title. The birds that he wants to go and see with his father someday. And he and his family go on a cross-country trip all the way across America to go and see the father in the hospital all the way on the other end of the country. But they decide to drive it rather than to fly it because Charlie makes his desire known that he wants to find all of these birds, and hopefully he can find them all before he meets up with his father again. And there's the whole idea that if the father can see this list, can see how much effort Charlie has put in to making this list happen, then maybe he might recover. It's sort of a skewed version of the miracle cure narrative. It is not the miracle cure narrative. I want to make that clear. The miracle cure narrative is basically what you see in The Secret Garden, where under one condition only, the person under their own power has the ability to take up thy bed and walk, and that just whole light switch off, light switch on thing is what Charlie is hoping for, at least subconsciously, but it isn't what happens in this book, and he knows it's not what's going to happen, really. Like, he's smart enough to know that this is not how life works, not in the real world, or not in this book's world, which I appreciate, because the miracle cure narrative is completely unrealistic, and it's also very unhelpful. When people go into having an acquired disability with the expectation that, yes, this will cure itself spontaneously if I just do X, or if I just do Y, or if I just do Z, if I am good enough, if I pray hard enough, if I try hard enough, it's not always going to be that way. There are certain injuries, there are certain disabilities that are impossible to fully cure. And that's not even necessarily a bad thing. It's just the way that life works. The whole, I don't like this saying. I really don't, because I often find that it's used in a very heartless way. But that whole thing about facts do not care about your feelings, unfortunately, and I say this with gentleness, that applies to real life. That applies to these situations much of the time. There are definitely situations where it is possible to treat yourself, even to cure yourself, but don't expect it to happen overnight. Expect that these things will often take time and will often take effort. And expect, too, that sometimes, no matter how much effort you yourself put in independently and your support network puts in for themselves, and everyone's helping and everyone's working together, sometimes it just doesn't work back to your baseline, quote, normal in the end. That's one of the main narratives of this book, because when Charlie does get to the hospital with his family, after having found quite a few of these birds, his father is not immediately well again. He can understand bits and pieces of what's going on, but there's quite a lot of residual damage. And there's going to be quite a lot of residual damage for a very long time. The narrative makes that quite clear. He comes round and he says to Charlie that at some point, the wonderful thing about this book is that he wants to keep going on this list with Charlie. The general conceit of this book is the importance of family togetherness, not of the miracle cure. That is not what this narrative is about, as I have said. The importance of family togetherness cannot be overstated in this book, because it is one's social network, one's support network, that can make or break a person's situation if they have an acquired disability that they are not used to dealing with, or that they don't know how to deal with. They can't cope on their own, so they need other people to help them. Charlie himself has a disability due to the autism, but he uses his father to help him cope with that and the resources and love that his father can give him. And consequently, his father is able to use him. I don't mean use in a malicious way, by the way, but his father is able to use him to help along his own recovery. It's like, look at this. I have a family. I have a wonderful son who has done all of these things to try and make me happy. And there's not going to be this miracle cure, but I do still have what I had before going into Afghanistan. I have this family. I have these loving relations. And I'm going to be okay, whether my brain and body are okay or not. So I really, really like this narrative, not only for its realism, but also for the fact that it emphasizes and brings out the fact that we are here to help one another through hard times. The actual meaning of love, like when you take your vows as a married couple, in sickness and in health, that's one of the biggies, I think, because people really, a lot of the time, don't understand the ramifications of that. But it doesn't just have to be married couples either, of course. It can be between you and your parent, between you and your child, between you and your siblings, you and your friends, just anyone who can be with you through a process that you are not used to handling, that you do not have the resources on your own to handle. If you can find strength in one another, it's all going to be better than it would be if you were doing it on your own. This is true of Charlie. This is true of his father in this narrative. And I really, really like that, because, again, that is real life. This is a children's book, but it's real life, and I love it. Cool. So that is my analysis of the Someday Birds. And there's a lot I left out, but because no spoilers, by the way, spoiler warning, hi, that's a thing. So, yeah, I didn't want to spoil the entire plot. Please go read the book. It's very, very good. If you can find it, hurrah, if you can. Check out Goodreads, that kind of thing. And I will see you tomorrow, my beautiful babes and babettes, for another book. Can't remember which. I got a list, and yeah, that's also a thing. Okay, so have a beautiful day, and I will see thee later. Mwah!